All right, everybody, welcome to NorCal Sports Network. And we have a special treat for you tonight. We've got Giants legend Dave Dravecky joining us. Dave, welcome, Dave, from Colorado Springs, right? You're still in Colorado Springs?
No, actually, we are now in Mesa, Arizona, Dan.
Oh, you're in Mesa. Okay.
Yeah,
gosh.
We've moved all over the place. So
okay, I'm on the other side of you. I'm in Sun City area of Arizona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sun City West, right in Peoria, right outside the the city limits of Peoria. We're actually in the Peoria School District, but I've got the Sun City West tag on me, so I feel like I got a disclaimer. I'm not that old where I'm totally retired in a retirement community yet. Even though I qualify.
Yeah. Same here. I've actually frequented Sun City because I just about 8 months ago had a partial knee replacement on my left knee. And,
okay.
The orthopedic surgeon that was highly recommended was in the Sun City area. So
okay. Maybe I'll get his name after the show from you, because I need a hip replaced, and I've been talking to different orthopedics, and most of the ones that do knees do the hips too. So
yeah.
But yeah, what a special treat to, a lot of old time Giants fans are part of our show. And, I remember the trade that brought you here in 1987, along with Kevin Mitchell and Craig Lefferts.
Sure.
That was a blockbuster deal. I think it was a 7-player deal.
Yeah.
And, both teams benefited. The Padres got Mark Davis and they got Chris Brown, and they got
Keith Comstock.
Yeah, Keith Comstock.
And Mudcat, Mark Grant.
Yeah, Mark Grant, who's now broadcaster with the Padres. So it was one of those win-win trades, I thought. But I thought the Giants did get the best of it still. We got great years out of Mitchell, and we had fantastic year out of you in 87 and 88. And so tell us, what was it like? That was the only time you were traded, I believe, right? You came up.
I originally signed with Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I was traded in the minor leagues from Pittsburgh to San Diego. And then 4th of July was traded over to the San Francisco Giants in 1987. That was really hard, Dan. You are in an organization, you basically come through the minor leagues into the Padres organization. And, and I loved it there. My family loved it there. We were building relationships in the community, and that was just a wonderful place for us to be raising our kids at the time and building that community of friends. And so when the trade came, it was really hard. Obviously the Giants were a rival, and, right. And yet when I look back on it and I think about it now, it's really interesting that within the Western Division, we were traded. That's so rare.
Yeah.
So rare. So initially my wife and I were like, oh my gosh, we're going to San Francisco? And, we didn't know what to expect. We knew the city was beautiful, but we didn't know anything about the surrounding area. All we knew was Candlestick Park and the Westin St. Francis in Union Square.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's all we remembered from traveling into the city to play the Giants. And so at first it was really hard when that happened, but it went away really quick when we actually landed in Chicago. And we got into the clubhouse of the Giants, and we were greeted by Mike Krukow, and Kruk said, "Man, welcome, guys. This is huge for us, and we're really looking forward to it." And so that was the initial contact with a player. And so now you've got someone saying, "Hey, you're a key part of this organization now, and this trade was huge for us as we march towards the pennant." And then we got one of the kids in the clubhouse said, "Hey, the manager wants you up in his office." And so Kevin and Lefty and I we ended up walking upstairs to this tiny little office that was stuck up there in the visitors' locker room in Chicago. And Roger Craig, Al Rosen, and Norm Sherry, all three were actually in the office. And they had us sit down in front of them and basically said, "Gentlemen, welcome. And you are key pieces to the puzzle that is going to take us to the promised land." And they made, if you remember that year, there was one additional trade that ended up, I think they ended up getting Donnie Robinson, and they picked up Rick Russell.
Yep.
So they got Big Daddy and Donnie Robinson. I mean, Big Daddy came in, you looked at Big Daddy and you go, what's he do? and yet, I mean, he was a stud. This guy had the nastiest sinker he could hit, and he was like a cat on the mound defensively.
Yeah, big guy, but he can move. Yeah.
Very athletic. And Donnie Robinson, he could have been in a regular lineup as a DH.
Oh, yeah, that guy could hit.
Flat out hit. And, and he obviously, as a relief pitcher, he had great stuff too. He was a really good pitcher.
I have a baseball right here from May 15th, 1980. I was in the stands, and I caught this ball at Candlestick from Willie McCovey was the batter, and Don Robinson was pitching for the Pirates.
No way.
Yeah, I got it. I got the score right there. Pirates 3, Giants 2 in 12 innings. And I put it on there that, Willie turned it that way. Yeah, Willie McCovey, Don Robinson. So
that's really cool.
It's kind of a special ball because two ex-Giants at the time, later on and stuff. But Willie was my favorite player growing up, Willie McCovey. So 87 comes. You guys end up making I still remember the series. I think it was, let's see, was it August or? Yeah, it was August. It was early August. You guys were playing Cincinnati at home, a 4-game series, and you were down like 4 or 5 games to the Reds. It was a key series, and you swept them. And it just you guys just took off. You were like 53 and 55 going into the series, and you ended up the year 90 and 72 or something like that. So, but then you get into the playoffs, and back then it was, East versus West.
Yep.
So just one round to go to the World Series. And it's 2-2, I believe. And you're pitching game 6 in St. Louis, right? Was it 2-2 at the time or 3? No, you guys were up 3-2.
We were up
3-2. 3-2 because you won. I was at the 2 games at Candlestick. You won.
Mm-hmm.
And so you went up 3-2. Hackman Leonard was going crazy, hitting home runs left and right in the series. You're pitching game 6.
Yes.
It's a pitcher's duel, 0-0. Take us to that game. And we all who watched the game remember the misfortune of Candy losing the ball in the lights. But tell us what was happening in that game. You were in a groove.
Yeah, I mean, coming off of game 2 and throwing a 2-hit shutout against John Tudor.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really good. And so you go into game 6 and, I'm cruising. I mean, things are just following what happened in game 2. And so, everything is going extremely well. I'm firing on all cylinders. I'm hitting spots. I'm changing speeds. I'm getting a really good lineup out. And then all of a sudden, we run into the situation with the ball being hit in the lights. And I have to be honest with you, Dan, I am the worst when it comes to remembering things in my career. I just know I had a lot of fun as a pitcher for the Giants and the Padres. But I do know that when Candy went after the ball, I mean, you could tell that it was right in the lights. Mm. And I mean, he was making every effort to make that catch. think it ends up that the guy gets a triple out of it.
Yeah.
Is it Quinones?
I'm trying to remember, who it was at the time. I think that's it.
But anyway, they're standing on third base, and the next guy up hits a pop-up to right field, and it's in foul territory, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And Candy comes up and makes a great play on it, but they get the run. The runner tags, and they score. Okay, so now we're down 1-0, and I went 6 innings in that game.
Yeah.
And we ended up ultimately losing that game 1-0.
1-0. Yeah.
And Atlee Hammaker, my best friend in baseball, and still one of my closest friends to this day.
Oh, that's cool. Didn't know that. That's great.
He went in Game 7. He got to start Game 7. I think we ended up losing that game maybe 4-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. Yeah.
But just a tough series. St. Louis was a really good ball club. George Hendricks at first.
Right.
You got Coleman, in the outfield. You got Willie McGee in the outfield. You got, Lonnie Smith. These guys run like deer.
Yeah, that was a fast team. Ozzie Smith, like you mentioned.
Yep.
Tommy Herr.
Tommy Herr. Yep. Yeah. Fell at third base. I can't remember, who did they have behind the dish? Was that what was his name?
Behind the plate?
Yeah, behind the plate.
Was it Daryl Porter, or who was
it? Was Daryl Porter.
Okay, Daryl Porter, yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, they had a great ball club, so going up against them was really tough. And losing that series was really hard because, we felt like we were the better team.
Yeah.
It's a difference whether you feel like you're the better team or not, Dan. On any night, the best teams get beat, and sometimes by a team that is considered the worst.
Correct. Yeah.
So, we were going up against one of the best. Well,
here's
2 teams standing.
Right. Here's a question from one of our listeners and longtime listeners. Mark Gray says, at the time on that foul ball, did you want Candy to let it drop, or did you feel like he had a shot at him at the plate?
Oh no, man! I thought he had a shot of him at the plate. We got to get outs.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. I have to say something about Candy, because I've got a really good relationship with Candy. We were in Mexico a couple of years ago on the Giants Vacation Club trip, and it's really cool. We were with, I don't know how many fans. It was just really awesome. And Kipe was on the trip, and Chris Spire was on the trip, and Robbie Thompson, Candy Maldonado, myself, and I think one other person was on that trip. And so anyway, as we were we were in a panel of discussion with the fans one night after dinner. And so they were having the opportunity to ask us questions. And, somebody asked about the incident in right field. And I just said, Candy, let me answer that. And I said, you know what? I want you all to know something. Candy Maldonado was doing everything he could out there to catch that ball. And there's no question that ball was in the lights. And it was just unfortunate that happened. But I would want Candy Maldonado in right field every night from me, because that's what I think about Candy Maldonado as a baseball player. And I've got to tell you, Dan, I think for years he had held in whatever it was, the judgment of whether or not he could have caught the ball, just an excuse, all that, for all those years. And he came up to me afterwards. He gave me a big old hug and said,
wow,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're all out there trying to do our best.
Right.
At the end of the day, you got a pop-up you can catch. You're not thinking about dropping the ball. You got to make a play, and then you come up firing to home.
Yeah.
It was just unfortunate. But at the end of the day, you got to score runs to win, right?
Right. Yeah. And then, that's we don't want to get too much. I don't want to get too much into the current Giant situation, but that's the problem with the current ball club. They having a trouble scoring. I don't
Well,
know if you got a chance to see that game a couple of weeks ago with Blake Snell and Chris Sale. That was a old time classic pitchers duel.
no, I didn't get a chance to see it, but
Yeah,
I did see the box score of today's game because I didn't get a
yeah,
chance to watch it. 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position.
yeah. Final hit came in the bottom of the ninth. Yeah,
Yep. 7 guys left on base. You can't do that. And it's
right.
been pretty consistent throughout the season, you know.
Yeah. Well, we went through this last night on our post game show. One of the biggest reasons the Giants have trouble scoring is because they have too much swing and miss throughout the lineup. We looked at every player on the team in the lineup, and every starter has a higher than 20% K rate. And then we looked at the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres, most of them in the teens or low teens. And that's why, you see guys not being able to hit with runners in scoring position because you can't have unproductive outs. You got to just make contact.
Yep.
And,
Yep. Move the line as
yeah,
the old guys used to say, put it in play, see what happens, move the line.
yeah,
When you do that,
absolutely.
things eventually happen.
Yeah. It's interesting because you played with Tony Gwynn. Was he there with you in San Diego or was he not there yet?
Yeah, we came up to the big leagues together.
Okay. So you were with maybe I consider one of the top 5 greatest hitters, just with being, the guy never struck out. But today's hitters, I don't get it. It's like Tony would, okay, I got 2 strikes. I'm going to change my approach and just, I'm going to hit the ball somewhere. Greg Maddux shared a story. Him and Smoltz and Glavine, I think, combined struck him out like 10 times in his whole career, in their whole careers, something crazy like that. But
yeah,
so you playing with Tony, and then you see what happens today. Guys just swinging for the fences, and Tony would be turning over in his grave right now if he's watching today's game.
well, I just got back from San Francisco where I spent the weekend and had some time with Will Clark. When you bring the veteran player into the conversation, there's a significant frustration in us in relationship to the way the game's being played today. The analytics. The small ball that we used to play, get the runner over, hit behind the runner, advance the runner, get him in scoring position, move him over to third with 1 out, hit a sac fly, or get yourself a base hit, but make sure you put the ball in the outfield,
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, there were just those little things that we did in playing the game. And I still think that people are interested in that way of baseball. We've gone through such a transition. We've gone through such a transition in the game. Dan, I've got 28 complete games in my career.
Yeah, that's more than probably the entire big leagues has this year, I bet.
Yeah, and Blake Snell just threw his first complete game in his career.
Right.
In his career, when he threw the no-hitter.
Right.
When you think about that, you just shake your head and you ask yourself, why? What is the difference? And
that's a great question. We've asked that. Do you have any answers to that? Why it is that way?
Yeah, because I think the analytics is driving, from my perspective, maximum effort on every pitch. And they want velo. They want spin rate. And I find it amazing that oftentimes you'll hear, man, the spin rate's up, but he's 3 feet out of the strike zone.
Right.
What good is spin rate if you can't throw for a strike?
Right.
So, the other thing that's frustrating for me personally is that when you promote, and I won't put the blame on Major League Baseball altogether, because college baseball has adopted some of that. You get these kids down in high school that want to go to D1 schools, and everything's about maximum velocity.
Right.
Everything's about maximum effort. They want to see the velo. If you don't hit a certain number, you will not even be looked at out of high school. I mean, that to me makes no sense.
Not at all when you consider Greg Maddux never threw much harder than what, 94, 95?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And the early
he,
part of his career, Dan, in the early part of his career, when I was playing for the Padres and we would go into Chicago and he was starting, we could not wait for the game to start and face him.
yeah, because he threw straight.
Yeah. And then somebody got a hold of him
Yeah.
and taught him the art of pitching.
Yeah.
You know, today I'm so curious. You know, I've had brief conversations with pitching coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I've said, man, why is it so hard for these guys to take a couple miles off of a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, especially when you can sink it the way you sink it?
Right.
So you throw 97, then you come in 94. I mean, that difference alone makes a huge difference and an advantage.
Yeah.
You know, and people have already established and said pitchers in today's game have the advantage because hitters are not adapting to the velocity. Well, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's true at all. Sure, there may be an edge because of analytics with pitching.
Mm-hmm.
But in the game of baseball, when it comes to hitting, what are we being taught when we hit? You know, we're finally starting to move away from launch angle.
Right.
Everything is about exit velocity.
Yeah.
So how hard are you trying to swing? I mean, Tony Gwynn didn't care about his exit velocity. You know, times he lob and volley off of over the shortstop's head like he was playing tennis.
Yeah.
And the dude was a magician with that bat in his hand. It was his magic wand.
Yeah, right.
You know,
He was unbelievable. Yeah. Just, I mean, we looked at his stats, his career on here one night, and we were pulling it up and we were just like amazed at the strikeout numbers and then just the hits for average. It was unbelievable. I think one year he struck out like, I want to say 9 times or something the whole year.
Yeah, he was amazing, Dan. He was one of those rare guys. He was like Barry Bonds, once in a generation player. You know, a Nolan Ryan. You know, today, you know, unfortunately, the injuries with Mike Trout, but another one.
Right.
That's one of those generational guys. Ohtani's a generational guy. You know, Mookie Betts. I mean, here's a guy that I love watching, and you know why? Because he's a little guy, and man, the dude hits for average, but he can also hit a home run. And you know what? He doesn't. I don't think he thinks about hitting home runs. I think he thinks about hitting line drives in the alleys. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I've actually got it right here. Look at Tony Gwynn's year. He hit 394. He had 19 strikeouts in
many at bat.
Yeah, in 419 at bats. There was another year, 679 in 1989. 679 plate appearances, 30 strikeouts, hit 336. The year you got traded, 370 in 87.
Yeah.
Or 35. I mean, the guy he struck out 790 times in over 10,200 plate appearances. And it's just unbelievable. And guys today are obtaining that strikeout rate or those numbers in 3 seasons.
Yeah. I know it really is amazing. But I will say, you know, getting back to the 1987 playoffs against the Cardinals, man, I'll tell you what, it was such a joy to play on that team with those guys, to be traded over. You know, when we first met Al Rosen, Roger Craig, Norm Sherry, and they said, boys, welcome. You are part of the pieces of the puzzle that is going to take us to the promised land. Man, we we all of a sudden realized as we started playing with this ball club just how good these guys were. And
Yeah.
we were a part of a winning environment. And
Yeah.
I'm convinced, Dan, that it was then that this Giants thing started rolling. You
Yeah.
had Willie Mazes, you had your Willie McCoveys, you had your greats from the past that everybody thought about. But all of a sudden now it's postseason run, 87, we miss going to the World Series. 89, we get to the World Series.
Right.
I mean, all of a sudden, you had, things starting to happen in the organization, and Barry Bonds comes in.
Right. That was the key, was Roger Craig and Al Rosen. I'm convinced they had the attitude, hey, stop complaining about Candlestick and the cold. We're going to use it to our advantage. And Roger Craig, what was it like playing for such a positive manager like that?
Oh, it was great because he let you play.
Mm.
He let you play, and he did things unconventional. He was the guy that always, you would think in this situation, you got to bunt. No, not with him, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes a bunt.
Or and you're squeeze, like, suicide squeeze.
What's going on? But this is cool, So he did things he was really unique, and I really liked him. He was just a good man, just a good guy, and I really enjoyed playing for him. I loved Norm Sherry. Norm Sherry was my pitching coach in San Diego.
Wow.
And so when I came over to San Francisco, he knew me.
Yeah.
And what I loved about Norm was when I would go to the mound and I was having a rough time, he would come out and there would be just a few things he would say to me. Every now and then he'd say, look, slow it down. And I knew exactly what that meant. I just would start rushing in my delivery. So he actually, through slowing it down, forced me to focus on being more deliberate in my delivery. And that kept me in balance to then explode to the plate. The other thing he would say when he would come to the mound is, put your hand behind your ear. Get the arm up behind the ear. Get your hand behind the ear. Get it up there. And you can't get your hand behind the ear. It's almost impossible when you're throwing a baseball. But he knew by saying that to me that my arm slot would no longer be, I'm trying to make this work, be to the side, but all of a sudden I'd be on top. And it was not just the arm on top, it was the fingers on top of the ball instead of on the side of the ball. And he knew just by getting me to do this, get it up here, behind the ear was the phrase that said, do that.
Wow.
So I would make the adjustment. So it was an incredible year.
Yeah. It was a fantastic season, and it led to, like you said, I mean, a whole new era. Giants were from 71 was the last division title until 87. So I was 10 years old in 71. So I went through my entire teen years with no playoffs, not winning baseball. 70s, 80s, we got teased a little bit in the 82 season down to the last weekend of the season. But then, the 85 season was horrible. They lost 100 games, and then they drafted Will Clark and Robbie Thompson, and that was the beginning. And then they brought in Roger Craig, and it just changed everything. And then you mentioned Al Rosen. So what I want to talk to you next about, Dave, is you come off that 87 season and you come back in 88, and 1988 you were let's see, what am I looking here? I was just looking at your numbers here. 88
2 and
2. Yeah,
I was
2 and 2. You only threw 37 innings that year. You were dealing. Was the shoulder acting up then?
Yes.
But you didn't. When did you find out that you had cancer and then had to have the deltoid muscle, taken out? When was that?
I think it was in September of 1988. So,
Okay.
so when I started the season, Roger gave me the ball on opening day.
Right.
So I'm slotted in the number one position. I mean, incredible honor.
Right.
Opening day, Dodger Stadium, Fernando Valenzuela versus Dave Dravecky.
Yeah.
I mean, you painted a better picture. We went on to win that game 5-1. I gave up 4 hits, and I hit a double off of Fernando. So, I mean, there was a lot going on in that game.
Right.
And I was more excited about the double than I was about the pitching.
Funny, because we had Sean Estes on a little over a week ago, and he said his biggest thrill, he pitched in a game where he was given the sign to hit Mike Piazza back when he was with the Mets, and but because Clemens had or not hit Mike Piazza, but hit Roger Clemens, excuse me, he was given the sign to hit Clemens, and he missed him in the first inning, missed him, and it created a brouhaha and then settled down. But later in the game, he hit a home run off Clemens, and he said that was the real thrill.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. So you opening day, you pitched tremendously, and a little bit later, not too far along after that, not too much time passes, you start feeling something. What was going on, and tell us about how everything came about, how you found out, and what was going on.
Well, I was dealing with an impingement in my shoulder, and I couldn't figure out what was going on because I tried to throw hard and I couldn't get anything on the ball. And I kept telling Norm, there's something wrong. I can't get anything on the ball. So they basically put me on the disabled list, and I don't know how long I was on, but then I tried to come back, went on a rehab assignment down to Phoenix, and I was in the bullpen, and I said, Norm, it's still bothering me. I mean, there's something going on. So I went back, and Dr. Campbell, he went in and did surgery on my shoulder, and lo and behold, I had a frayed bicep tendon. And so what was happening was the fraying of the tendon was getting impinged every time I threw a pitch. So there was just pressure on it every time I threw. Right. And it was just really irritating, and it just restricted me from being able to throw. So they went in and they cleaned that up. But then I continued to struggle, and things just weren't going well. And as a result of that, we were getting close to the end of the season, and they just shut me down because I wasn't able to come back. And then when they shut me down, this lump that had developed on the outside of my left arm had started to grow. Part of the reason why we didn't move forward to do anything, which was understandable, was because my arm was in a state of atrophy because I wasn't using it. And because I had the issues, I wasn't able to build strength back up. So we kept an eye on it. And then in September, Dr. Campbell said, you know what, Dave, I really want you to have this checked and get another MRI. So I went and I got an MRI at the Cleveland Clinic. And I remember sitting in the examining room. I don't know if we did the MRI in San Francisco, and then I went to Cleveland, and I got a call from Dr. Campbell. You need to go see the doctors in Cleveland. We've got some concerns on what we see. So wow. in any case, while I was in Cleveland at the clinic, they did a biopsy, and my wife and I were waiting for the report from the biopsy in the examining room. And it was a really intense time, Dan, really intense. Because, we were under the impression that it was a hematoma where muscle fiber had torn.
Right.
The muscle fiber calcified, and it was a hardened mass. So would this mass restrict me from pitching? What would we do to take care of it? And that was what we were thinking in the process of waiting for the doctors. And when the doctors came back, they had confirmed what had ended up happening was the door was opened a few inches. We were inside the examining room. The doctors were outside. They were looking at the films and then reviewing the report on the biopsy, and outside the door used the word tumor. When we heard that, the first thing that I could think of was we need to pray. And so in that moment, I just said, God, I have no idea what we're about to face, but whatever it is, give us the strength to endure. That's all I ask. And the doctors came in, they told us that in fact it was cancer. And he looked at me and said, outside of a miracle, you'll never pitch again.
Wow.
And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about whether or not I'd pitch again. I was wondering whether or not I was going to die from this disease called cancer. And if I did, I was thinking about, who's going to marry my wife? Who's going to end up being the father of my children? And will he love them as much as I do? And in that moment, though, Dan, the thing that startled me in that thought process was all of a sudden the thought came to my mind, oh my gosh, will this guy love my wife and children more than I do?
Wow.
Because I know who I am, and I know I haven't been the best husband and I haven't been the best dad. And, sometimes the game has that effect on us.
Right.
Everything becomes about us. It's all about Dave. It's the athlete who has the spotlight on him. But what most people don't realize is there's a family in the shadows of Dave. And oftentimes the unsung hero in the family is actually the wife. And in this case, my wife, Jan.
Yes.
And the role in taking care of our family, taking care of our home. Now I'm the one that's going to have to go through the cancer. She's going to now become a nurse too, and take care of me. And so in that moment, God put a lot into perspective for us, an awful lot. And, I came back to reality in the middle of all of that. And I heard Jan say, could you say that one more time, Doc? And he said, outside of a miracle, he'll never pitch again. And all we hope is that he'll be able to play catch in the backyard with his son.
Wow.
That was it.
Wow.
And so in that moment, I had a choice. I had two choices actually staring me in the face. Okay, do I take care of this and just walk away from the game? Or do I take care of this and see where it goes? And so I chose the second choice. Let's take care of this. Let's get my health back. And then let's see if I can move forward with the potential of trying to make a comeback. And a lot of people have questioned why I did that. And oftentimes what I say is simply this: I didn't want to live for the rest of my life because I chose not to try and come back, wondering if I could come back. I wanted to, I'm the kind of guy that says, you know what, I'm not going to give up until it's very apparent that I can't go any further.
Right.
And so, I've got to try, and I've got to leave it all out there. And if it doesn't work, then I know I've given it my best shot. I mean, my father, my dad always taught me growing up, Dave, whatever you choose to do, and I don't care what it is, whatever you choose to do, work as hard as you can to be the best you can.
Yeah.
And then he told me, and then he said, have fun doing it.
That's great. That's great advice. And so in 88, you're diagnosed with this, and you're now have to have surgery on the to remove the deltoid muscle. Was it? It was called a desmoid tumor, I guess is what it was, right?
Yeah, it was a desmoid with centers of fibrosarcoma, which is a very aggressive cancer. But because it was encapsulated in the desmoid, it didn't become metastatic and spread through the bloodstream, which is really what made the scenario the best possible scenario.
Right.
So they went in and moved the mass in 50% of the deltoid muscle.
Right.
And then we did cryosurgery, which was the freezing of that.
Of the humerus bone?
The humerus bone. Yep.
Okay. So Yeah.
Nobody had ever done this before. I was the guinea pig.
Wow. So then you make this. You must have worked out probably harder than you ever did in your lifetime, I imagine, to get that
Yep.
strength back and develop that muscle that was half taken out.
Yeah.
And you make this amazing comeback. I remember, weren't you pitching in Stockton? Was that your last game before you made it up?
That was my game.
First game. Okay, Stockton.
First game. Yep.
And then you pitched great there. There's a big crowd there. And then August 10th, I'm at the time I'm living down in Southern California. So it's August 10th, 1989. You're facing Cincinnati. I just remember the crowd just being electric that day, and
Yep.
I definitely was listening to the game. I'm trying to remember, and I was just following it, and I was just so. I mean, it was just. I remember actually getting tears brought to my eyes as I'm just thinking about it now. I'm kind of an emotional guy, but I was just like so excited for you. And you're just the crowd just went nuts, and it was describe that feeling that day. I think you went 8 innings, if I recall, in that game.
Yeah, that would never happen today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they would have had you out of there in the fourth, but you go 8 innings and you get the win. I think didn't you only? I know it was 4-3, but didn't you only give up 1 or 2 runs yourself, or
throwing a one hitter through 7 innings?
That's what it was. Yes,
through 7 innings, and then I gave up the 3 runs. It was a 3-run home run. I gave up to Luis Quinones.
Okay.
And I got lazy with the cutter over the middle of the plate. And I was trying to jam him on the inside part of the plate, and unfortunately, he got the barrel on it and hit a home run. But I finished out the inning, and then Steve Bedrosian came in and closed the door.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was surreal. It was incredibly. I don't even know how to describe it, to be perfectly honest with you, because it was just an amazing moment and experience for me. I think a lot of it revolved around how many people were involved in me getting back to the mound. I think that's what I was most overwhelmed with. The love and support of my family.
Wow.
The love and support of Bob Lurie and Connie Lurie and the Giants organization, all the way from the top to the bottom, and my teammates. The love and support of the team of doctors that cared for me to get me back to that place. The love and support of the nurses that had to put up with me when I was in the hospital during that time. I mean, there were just so many people to thank. Larry Brown, therapist at Palo Alto Sports Clinic, that was instrumental through my time with him to get me strong enough to be able to pitch again. I mean, that was all him and his team at the Palo Alto Sports Clinic. And then Mark Laton, who literally stepped in when I was at the ballpark and cared for me and took care of me. And so, I mean, you're just standing on the mound, and those are the things that kind of flush over you. And the most important thing for me was I saw this as God giving me another opportunity, another chance for a little boy to see his dream come true by getting back on the mound for a second time. And so I was so thankful that he brought all these amazing people into my life that helped me to get to that place. So it was a really special day. It was an incredible celebration afterwards, but we're in a pennant race. So here we go. Let's go, boys. Strap them on and let's rock and roll.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have that incredible game. And then 5 days later, August 15th, you're up in Montreal.
Yeah.
And, we've all who know your story, we know it's described, it's called the pitch heard round the world. Tell us what you were feeling right up to that point beforehand.
Yeah.
And then the pitch, the moment you threw the pitch, I mean, your world literally changed in 1 minute, like any of our lives could change in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Tell us that feeling, how you're pitching, you're feeling good, game's going along, and then boom.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I was feeling great, and I was, firing it on all cylinders again.
Yeah.
And through 5 innings, I've shut out
Yeah.
the Expos, and then all of a sudden, sixth inning rolls around. In the fifth inning, I was sitting on the bench, and I was feeling a little twinge, but at the end of the day, it was not even close to some of the stuff that I felt, prior to going through all this. So I was like, okay, this is normal. I mean, and pitchers are always doing the gyrations and
Right.
touching stuff and moving stuff around, and so it was basically like that. So I get out there in the sixth inning, and I start struggling a little bit, but I'm still in the zone. And I hit Galarraga, and it was just one of those things. Pitch got away. Then Tim Raines comes to the plate, and TK gives me the sign for the sinker away, and I wind up. And when I go to release that pitch, it was like somebody had shot off a gun right in my left ear.
Mm.
And it was this huge explosion. And I mean, in that moment, I just grabbed my arm as I was falling to the ground.
Yeah.
Because in that moment I thought, oh my gosh, did my arm just break and protrude out of the skin? And if it did, I don't want to see blood because I'll out. I mean, I'm literally thinking about this as I'm almost in shock. And I'm thinking, oh, hold it. And I'm laying on the ground, and Will comes to me and he's, Dave, breathe, Dave, through the nose, out the mouth. Then Mark Laton comes in, breathe, Dave, breathe. And I mean, we're probably talking, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds from the time I fell, maybe a minute. And I'm holding my breath. And all of a sudden I started breathing. I started feeling a little bit better. The bone did not protrude through the skin. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And now they're wheeling me off, and I'm like, okay. So 5 hours before that, Dan, I was having lunch with Bob Nepper. And Bob Nepper looked at me and he said, Dave, I hate to burst your bubble, but he said, I want you to hear something. I don't think that this experience you're going through is about the miracle of the comeback. I think it's about the miracle of salvation that occurred in your life in Amarillo, Texas, when you professed faith in Jesus Christ and you put your trust in him. And I think what God's doing through baseball is providing a platform for you to share his love with those who hurt.
Wow.
And I looked at Bob and I said, whoa. I said, well, Bob, that's really cool, but I got a game to pitch tonight. I'm back in the saddle, bro. I said, thank you so much for sharing that. 5 hours later, I'm laying on the ground, Dan, and whose words do you think I hear?
Bob Nepper.
Bob Nepper.
Yeah.
Laying on the ground, and all I could hear were Bob Nepper's words. When I was coming out of the shock and I started breathing, all I could hear was, Dave, it's the miracle of salvation. It's the day you met Jesus, and God's given you a platform through baseball to share his love, that love through Jesus, with those who hurt. And I'm thinking, man, God is up to something so much bigger than baseball.
Wow.
Those were my thoughts. It wasn't, why me? Oh my gosh, my career's over, all that stuff. And I'm not here to say that it would be wrong to feel that way at all. It just so happened that then in that moment, there were other things that had gone on that were now front and center in my life. And I, at the time, I tried to be positive and saying, well, I'll just have to try another comeback. but in the back of my mind, I knew that when I broke my arm, that there was something going on in there that was very serious. And as a result of that, eventually I would have to retire from the game. And, so in November of that year, after, being in the World Series and, wearing a sling and struggling physically.
And didn't you break it again during the celebration at the?
Out like an idiot. I went out and wanted to celebrate again. So, I got the arm broke 2 inches above the original break. And so I was like, my gosh, Dave, when are you going to wise up? And so it got to the point during that 10-day period where they, didn't have the World Series.
Right. But
hard. It got so hard. I was sleeping in a lazy boy chair. So Jan called Al Rosen and asked Al if it'd be okay if we went back to Ohio, which is where we had moved to.
Right.
And go home and get rest, and we'll connect with you after the World Series. So, went home and realized around Thanksgiving that it wasn't going to happen. And I announced my retirement, and the cancer came back again.
Wow.
Radiation therapy, more surgeries, a staph infection that lasted for 10 months. And finally, the doctors on June 6th, I think it was, or June 7th, I went to New York City at Sloan Kettering Memorial Cancer Research Center. And Dr. Brennan, my doc there, he was the chief of surgery, said, you know what, Dave, it's time to amputate. And I looked at him and I said, good. I said, it's time to get rid of this. Because for 8 months, I couldn't use it. It was just hanging on my body.
Now you were born in Youngstown. Do you know Eddie DiBartolo as well? Yeah.
I sure do. Okay. You know what, Dan? One of the coolest things, when I was a junior in college at Youngstown State University, I had a great year. And I was 7-1 with a 0.88 earned run average.
Uh-huh.
And Eddie Jr. called me to his office. And he said, hey, Dave, I wanted to just talk to you about your career. He said, man, I'm so excited for you. It looks like things are going really well. He said, I want you to know that I am here. If you need anything, you just let me know and I will help you.
Wow.
And man, I was just so grateful.
Yeah, he's taking care of a lot of guys.
Yes, he has. He's a good man. He's a really good man.
Yeah. The Niners were very fortunate to have him own that club for all those years. But so you have the arm amputated. And I remember reading your book and what you went through. A lot of like, who am I? Who am I? Because your identity was your arm. Yep. And now you've got to deal with these emotions, and it affected your relationship with Jan. It affected everything, and you had to actually, I'm sure you had to get some counseling and all of that stuff, and because you were dealing with anger, because all of a sudden your life is completely, you relied on that arm. I've heard you say your arm, it was like a fingers to a piano player,
or the feet of a ballerina.
Right. And that was everything to you. Yep. And now you're questioning who you are. Tell us about that. How did you work through that and eventually, become what you are today, a motivational speaker and helping many other people through hardships in life?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that that it was an extremely difficult period of time. I did go through an identity crisis, and a big piece of that was the fact that my life and my identity was so wrapped up in my arm, and I never really believed that it was. But it's not until you lose something that you realize just how much it meant to you. And so for me, it was coming to grips with the reality that I'm no longer going to be a baseball player. So if Dave is no longer going to be a baseball player, then who is he?
Mm.
And it was a very difficult time. And in that part of our life during that season, we had some really good people help us to realize that. No, let me say that differently. We had some really good people help me to realize that I needed to get help. And more importantly, Jan was going through the struggles too, and that I needed to be supportive in getting her help.
Mm.
And so the both of us entered into counseling. But here's the unique thing. In the beginning, I was stubborn. I was denying that I needed help. But I said, because I love my wife, I'm going to go with her to support her. 3 weeks into that, which was right around the time I lost my arm, right after I lost my arm, I ended up being the guy on the couch. And now I was the one pouring out my guts and learning how to communicate all this stuff that I had stuffed for years in the context of my identity. And now I'm letting it out, and I'm learning how to actually talk about fear, how to talk about the concerns I have over my future, all of that. And it was absolutely an incredible experience. We were in counseling for 18 months. On top of that, the counselors, through our doctor, our family doctor, put us on medication. And we both got on Prozac during that time. It was extremely important. It helped in a significant way to restore the chemical imbalances in relationship to what we were experiencing. And it was really through the excessive, the burnout of trying to be everything to everybody during that time, right, and having to deal with the identity crisis on top of that.
Yeah.
And Jan trying to take care of everything and holding it together. And it was just way too much. And it just overwhelmed us to the point where we were driven to that place of being unhealthy. And through the 18 months of counseling and getting on the antidepressant, we started to heal. And then all of a sudden we got released from the counseling. We made a decision to move away from Ohio, which was where we were both born and raised, by the way, to get a fresh start. We got to Colorado, and Jan looked at me and she goes, I want you to know, I just got a book in the mail, a manuscript from an author who lives locally, who is a Christian counselor. And the title of the book is something related to men and their anger.
Oh, is it Patrick Morley's book?
No, it was Gary Oliver.
Oh, okay.
Gary Oliver, Christian counselor out of Colorado at the time. And so all of a sudden she says, hey, would you be interested in going to him to work on your anger issues? By this time, after the counseling, I was so prepared, Dan, to do whatever it took to not be that guy, to be free from all of that.
Yeah.
So I went for the next 12 months, I went into counseling. So you take that 30-month period of time, and I'll kind of put a little bow on this. You take that 30-month period of time, and what it did in the context of my struggle with my identity was to actually help remind me, because they were Christian counselors, they reminded me of who I am and helped me to see for the first time in my life that what I do is not my identity. My identity is in who I am. Right. And I had to go all the way back to the day that I met Jesus in Amarillo, Texas, reading the Bible, and the Bible literally challenging me. As I read God's word, I was convicted of my sin and went to him in seeking forgiveness and acknowledging that I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that Jesus went to the cross and died for my sins. I believed that 3 days later he rose from the dead and now sits at the right hand of the Father. I believed all of that
Yeah.
established my new identity as a child of God.
Right.
And what I learned in that, by going back, I was reminded once again that Jesus went to the cross to take care of my sin. So all my sin got nailed to the cross. And what did he do in return as it relates to nailing my sin to the cross? He gives me a brand new start, a brand new nature. And I get to start fresh. And the scriptures teach that in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8, 9, and 10, that it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And
Not
this
a-
not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no man can boast."
Correct.
In the New Living Translation, the 10th verse says this: "For we are his masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he, God, prepared in advance for us to do."
Right.
I went back to that experience all those years later, or all those years before, when I met Jesus, and that's where my real identity was solidified.
Yeah.
And over that period of time, I had allowed baseball and my arm to, in essence, in some ways, take the place of Jesus,
Right.
being where my true identity lies as his child.
Right.
And so that 30 months, that was the beginning of a new journey.
Right.
That was the
So,
beginning. That was the beginning
yeah.
where we are at today, and that process of God working on my heart and maturing me in my faith has continued from those experiences in counseling to present day over the last, I don't know how many years since then.
Right. And
Oh,
you probably helped countless numbers of people who have gone through similar difficulties in life, whether it be physical or emotional, spiritual, all kinds of things. And that's an amazing story. You know, you think about the things that we think are the most tragic and things that we can't even imagine getting through. It's really God's grace.
oh,
That your arm was God's grace in your life to bring about a whole new focus and what he wants to accomplish in you, through you. And that's just a remarkable story, because I know, I mean, I tell people on this show, we're all going to go through life moments. We're all there's no you
yeah.
know nobody's immune to it.
No,
And
we're all
it's
gonna have our adversity.
yeah. So this is tremendous. Tell us before, in closing, as we finish up here, what it's like in a clubhouse when you have several believers, Christians, that are on a team. Uh, I mean, I've been in sports all my life, and I know that when there is that bond with many people, it can really uh, ignite a team and bring a team together if there is a lot of believers on a team. Tell us how that has worked for you in the clubhouse, and as you maybe mentor some of the younger players today.
Yeah, I think in our situation, um, we knew who we were, but we were also a part of a much larger group of players. So the most important thing in that clubhouse was we tried really hard not to isolate ourselves. They're not, regardless of where you're at spiritually, you're my teammate. you
Right.
know so the beauty of me as a believer is that I get to treat my teammate in the same way that God treats me, which
Mm.
means I get to love that guy the way God loves me. And so Atlee Hammaker, Scotty Gureltz, Brett
Yeah.
Butler, myself, Greg Litton, there were a few other guys, I'm sure. What we tried to do was we tried as best we could, and we weren't perfect in the process. I mean, if you remember back then, we were labeled God Squad 2.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we tried really hard to do was to treat our teammates with respect, love them well as our teammates, enjoy them between the lines. When we went, we had fun together playing baseball. But I think the other thing that was really important for us, because I think all of us, except for maybe one or two, were married, was that we actually made a pact with one another that we would protect each other when we were on the road. We would protect each other from any kind of influence that would want to um, do any kind of damage to our marriage. Because
The temptations, I imagine, were
all there.
crazy. All there, yeah.
They're all there. They're no different for us than they are for anyone else.
Right.
And so what we understood was, if we're going to enjoy this experience and do it well and be good teammates, then we've got to protect each other. And that's one of the things that I loved about my time in San Diego and my time in San Francisco, was because I had other people, other players that were believers, that understood the value of protecting one another.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We got a comment there from Red L. It says, praise God, Dave. Yes, that is a tremendous, I can't imagine what it would be like. And I'm sure maybe some teams it's like this, but I can't imagine it being too much. But where you're the only one that is a believer, and you're getting, ridiculed or razzed by the clubhouse, or it seems like it would be a little tough, but it seems like baseball and all the sports, really, football, basketball, there's a band of brothers, and I think even what I pick up in watching things is there's a respect even from the people who do not have the same faith, that they respect you for who you are, and they I've been around guys and they'll have a bad mouth, or, oh, sorry, didn't mean, say it's okay, man, don't worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I used to, baseball chapel played a big part in my life. There was baseball chapel in the minor leagues and baseball chapel in the major leagues, and the national organization of baseball chapel is in every clubhouse in baseball. So you do have probably a good 4 to 5% of the team is are guys that participate in the chapel. Now you have some clubs like St. Louis would get 21 guys that would be in chapel, back when right before Adam Wainwright retired, because Adam was a strong believer and a strong leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah,
guys like him and Matt Carpenter and Matt Holliday and a bunch of those guys, they were strong. They were very strong. So you had that influence on every team, which is actually wonderful, because like I said, you need to be careful, and staying together, protecting one another is so important. So that was absolutely imperative for us, but yeah, it's been an amazing journey, Dan. It really has. For 30 years, my wife and I, we have a ministry called Endurance with Jan and Dave Dravecky, and our website's endurance.org, and
endurance.org. Okay.
Basically what we've been doing for 30 years is to your point, in this journey that we've been on, we've learned so much, and so many have given to us, that we said, and I remember my wife saying this, when we get to the other side, we want to give back. And so our lives have been about giving back. And so we basically will send what we call our encouragement gift box to families who are going through some, real difficult times with depression or physical affliction. And most of it's cancer and amputation. But we send out about 1,200 boxes a year to families all over the country. And in that box is our story to encourage them as a gift in a book. And then we also did a Bible with Johnny Erickson Tata called the Encouragement Bible. And we stick that in every box to encourage them with God's word and helping them to understand where God is when it hurts. That's just a really huge thing for us. And we're just so grateful that all these years we've had the opportunity to be able to serve others in that way, which has been really cool.
And that's endurance.org, you said, right?
Yes, endurance.org.
Okay, let me hope I did my spelling right. Is that it right there? Did I spell it right?
You did.
Okay.
Yep.
Guys, if you want to visit that site and check that out, what Dave and Jan Dravecky have going, you could check out that site. And is that places that you can go there? Is there places to contribute there too, as far as donate?
There's a donate button, but as it relates to the encouragement gift box, because that's really where we feel so fortunate to be able to share our story. And we've been doing, to think that we've been doing it for 30 years is amazing. To think that Dan, I've been traveling the country telling the same story for 30 years.
Wow.
Now, obviously, there's been some adaptation to it because of where I'm at today and all that I've learned. But, you can go to the website, and on that website, there'll be something that'll be to the effect free gift, free encouragement gift, something along those lines. You just click on there. It takes you to a page. And if you know of someone who's hurting, all you have to do is fill that out as to who they are with the information that's there. Or if you are, fill out your information. And Connie, our assistant, and I think we have 4 or 5 volunteers now. They will put those boxes together and get them out to you.
Wow, that's great. That is wonderful. And is that run right here through? Is that in Ohio or here in Arizona? That's being.
Oh, it's actually in Salina, Kansas.
Oh, in Kansas. Okay. Very good. All right.
Our assistant Connie, we were all in Colorado Springs together.
Okay.
That's where we really got the ministry kind of fired up.
Neat.
And
okay.
When we moved, Connie stayed in Colorado, but then she moved to be closer to her family in Kansas and her grandkids. So we just moved our ministry with her there, and we now do satellite work.
Okay. Well, that's great. Where can people, if they want to read your books that you've got out, there's Come Back, and then When There Is No
when
you can't come back, and then I know you and Jan have written books together. Where can Amazon? Where else?
You could go to Amazon, or you can go to our website. We have books on our website that you can purchase.
Right there at endurance.org.
Right at the endurance.org. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If anybody wants to go out and get one of those books and read more about Dave's story, and maybe you're going through a hard time yourself, and Dave, can they reach out to you if they want to talk to you about through the website? Is there, if they just want to get some kind of help in any way?
There's an email. There's an email at the website that they can get to. They can actually use that email. It goes directly to Connie, and then Connie sends it directly to me.
That's fantastic.
So I get those, and I get a lot of them. And
is your speaking tour on the website, imagine, as well?
Yes, I think we do have it posted. There's a calendar that lets people know where I'm at, just in case I'm in their area.
Okay, great. Yeah, and if you want to check that schedule out, and if it's somewhere near you, or you check out Dave, he's a fantastic speaker. I've been close to 30 years. Imagine, let's see, early 90s. So yeah, 30, about 30 years ago, I heard you speak in Colorado Springs. I was up that way, and so that was fantastic. And I can only imagine how much things have, in 30 years, how much you've learned and grown.
Oh,
in just
a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, Dan.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot too, man. So it's been really good. It really has been.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you on more. Maybe we can get you back on another time, and we'll talk maybe, a little baseball and I know you've, like you said, you're an ambassador for the Giants, and that's great. So you're working with the San Francisco Giants, and we do the Giants show here on a regular basis. We're probably some people like us, what we have to say, and some don't. We don't hold back.
Yeah.
We're not. I've been a longtime fan for 56 years, 55 since I'm 63, and I started following baseball heavily. And when I was 7 years old, I can remember 1968 Bobby Bonds' first game against the Dodgers. He hit a grand slam, and I was watching it as a 7-year-old, and I was, I had two older brothers, and we were hooked. We were Giants fans, do or die, and we've gone through the rough years. So we had some glorious years in the 2010 decade, and I'm not liking what things are going right now. So I want change, and so I'm a little bit passionate when it comes to coming out with the Giants. I want to see them go back to, their winning ways. It became
you and me both.
It's
a lot more fun at the ballpark that way. That's for
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, it's been a real treat having you here. We want to thank you for joining us. I'll catch you in the green room here when we finish here. But just guys, if you missed the full show and you're just joining, go back to the beginning, rewatch it. You're gonna hear a lot of great stories of just talking baseball, even talking, pitching, hitting, talking about Tony Gwynn. There's a lot in there in the beginning. And so go back, watch it. This is one of our best interviews. We, definitely. 7:53. We're going to do a little post game at 8:30. We'll do a little Giants talk 8:30 tonight. So if you're here, come back at 8:30 and we'll cover today's game and talk about a little bit more about the Giants and the direction they're headed and that they need to go. So thanks, everybody. Again, thank you, Dave.
You got it, bud.
All right. Good night, everybody. See you back at 8:30, everybody.